introducing the funding so that this project can really start to take place as Councilman Henry said. And with any hope, the project will be completed sometime next year.
That's the intention.
Right, so they finish by this time next year, April of next year.
Is that?
That's what we'd like.
The game point?
Yep.
So that's why we felt the need to have a special meeting to.
Exactly. We need to hit the ground running, and we didn't want to wait any, want to jump on it as soon as possible.
And bids are scheduled to be received on the 24th.
That's what, 15, yeah?
Sorry?
What's the,
15?
yeah, 15.
Any other questions for?
What's the date of the receipt?
The 24th.
May 24th.
That-
Mayor, you discussed the committee. It's certainly within your purview as mayor to appoint a committee. I've heard yourself, Tom Quentin, Bill Sullivan. You care to appoint any other members?
Take Michael Henwood.
Well, certainly Vinnie should be first
And
because
Vinnie, I was going to do Vinnie as well for the record.
I'd like to get a second.
Okay, I recommend that shall be it for the council representatives, the three to make up your committee. Are there any other employees or staff members?
Do I need to have him on tonight?
No, I just want to be able to get a date out to these people so Stephanie can plan her schedule accordingly. And okay, that's fine.
Anything else? All right. Can you hang out?
Yep.
Stephanie, does the plant still call for those crazy shrubs that keep getting rid of geese? What is it, the junipers or something?
Junipers, I believe it
Is
was.
that still in there?
That was a
Okay,
good one.
thanks.
This time I'd like to open the meeting to the public. Ms. Ellis?
I'm Carol Ellis, and I'm on the Shade Tree Board. David Jordan invited people from the Shade Tree Board to come at 7 o'clock, and he said the public would be first, so I've been sitting here. But anyway, in 2006, the Shade Tree Board went out and did an inventory of all the trees on Veterans Field. And there are 175 trees, or there were then, on this field. 75 of these trees are memorial trees with plaques and family names and so forth. And they're not that big, but as I've heard, you're going to try to ball them up and burlap them and save them. Some of those trees are a lot bigger than you'll ever find in a nursery. And the little root hairs are just a few inches below the ground. That's where the trees get their water, and I just hope that these trees can be saved. But a greater concern is the magnificent oak trees along River Road and the first two trees as you enter to go into the community center. So this month we had a Shade Tree Board meeting, and Mia was there, and Fern Norris had to leave because she didn't know it'd be so long. Anyway, we read a letter that had been written to the city by a man named Nick Dowling. So he said, these are gorgeous big
I received that letter as
trees.
well.
Yeah, and so Greg answered the letter, and we read the response. I want to quote Greg. He said, "To preserve a tree the size of the ones you reference would necessitate the construction of tree wells the size of the drip line of the trees, since exposing the roots is crucial to survival, and this would require field space and add to the cost of the project." So we say, okay, you've got a project that's going to cost almost $10 million. Why can't you protect those few trees that are so enormous? I mean, they have a heritage oak in Teaneck that the whole town has tried to save. This tree is 4 feet in diameter, 60 feet tall, it's healthy, it's maybe 100 years old, I don't know, but those trees were put in before all of that fill came up, whenever they built Shelter Bay. Those trees have been there for a long, long time. And according to a New Jersey tree expert named Pam Zipsey, who's also on the Shade Tree Board of Edgewater, she says a tree like that would be worth $200,000, but you can't replace it at any cost. So we're here to try to at least save the oak trees along River Road.
Thank you.
So probably go, but think about this in the whole budget. Just save those trees.
Thank you.
Stephanie, what's the intention for the trees along the road?
The trees along River Road are intended to be saved at this point. The only one that is gonna have to come down is on the south park entrance, because we're reconstructing that with a new parking lot area. There's one that's right at the corner. That one unfortunately has to come down because of the alignment of the entrance. The ones along the front edge of River Road are gonna stay. The ones on the south, on the north parking lot area by the Legion, those are the ones that are gonna have to come down
Why?
due to
Those
the.
trees, you can't replace them. You cannot replace them. Just build a fence around them.
It's not as simple as building a fence
I
around
mean,
it.
a wall, a retaining wall.
As you've referenced, we did look into doing the tree walls, but it's not just the tree wall. It would have to come out 3 feet on either side of the trunk. What that does is the tree wall would have to be about 4 to 6 feet high. You have to put a fence around it so that people wouldn't fall into the well. You have to put in additional drainage measures all around the circumference of the tree to be able to get the water to the roots. And on top of that, the intention of this project is to realign the baseball fields. That's encroaching onto the area.
You're
in
not gonna have
between.
any shade.
No, that's good.
There's one tree with realignment of baseball fields that probably will have to. The other two are still in question because we make that decision, you know, with all due respect, they don't.
Thank you.
So, I mean, we will revisit that, we give you a word on that,
Thank you very much.
at least I will.
Sure. Would be, could we blacktop, sounds great, instead of worrying about filling that area?
Right around it with sidewalk, Kev, absolutely.
Could we do where we can cover it with concrete, would that solve the issue with the contamination?
And then
You're
start,
capping
and
it,
then start the retaining wall at
and then
that
start
point.
retaining wall around it?
We'll have to look at the different options because, as I said, realigning the fields would impact how that new wall is gonna go in with the fill and having to put in tree walls and all those different things.
Right.
But we can obviously look into trying to see what we can do as far as.
If you look at the specs, it looks like you can probably at
It's
least
very
say two.
tight because of the roof, because it is such a large tree.
That's why it needs to be saved. There's not another tree like that in the whole borough of Edgewater.
It's the intention of everyone here to try and save as many of them as we possibly can. But, you know, given the situation we're dealing with the field, I hope, you know, I
Well,
hope we can get as many as
I'm
possible.
board certified in occupational medicine and environmental health, and I think this Green Acres remediation project is blown way out of proportion to the PAHs. There are PAHs everywhere in New Jersey. You go to the park in Lyndhurst, they found them there. They're over in the pond at Flat Rock Brook, where I'm on the board of trustees. They're everywhere, and spending $10 million for PAHs is it, and not caring about saving a tree. That's just not environmentally wise. It's very, you know, costs too much to save those trees. I think that whole barren field is gonna just look terrible. You say you're gonna save them, you're gonna have to plant saplings, and it's gonna take 50 more years to have trees like we have here.
Thank you.
Hopefully there's only one.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Mary?
Mary Hogan, 606 on Hill Avenue. Thank you for attempting to save the trees. I absolutely agree with you.
Thank you.
Can I just ask you about this meeting? Are we just, the ordinances, when you're talking about introduction and adoption,
It
you're
is
just
valid, yeah,
discussing
like
it,
how
right?
we
It's not, they're not being introduced and adopted? I don't mean the special ones, I mean the ones at the bottom of the,
Everything else?
That's for the next public.
so you're just
For the next-
discussing, okay. Tonight you're passing on a temporary emergency appropriation cap improvement fund? And it indicates in the resolution that it's for unexpected expenses in the amount of $150,000. And I was just curious as to what those unexpected expenses were that were $150,000. Before you vote on it, if someone can give me an answer to that. In terms of the EV, the first aid squad, now that you're billing for ambulance, they are bringing in money to the town. I think that that should be taken into consideration in terms of the budget and not cutting it. The same thing with recreation. Recreation always brings in money to the town more than what is spent out. And I believe that recreation is an important thing for the, and certainly it's an insult to the health that you pay your professionals like that such little money when you're paying, you know, crossing guards who are in need, but they certainly don't have the training that a registered nurse does. You're going to chintz on what you're going to pay them per hour. In terms of another issue, but I have a question to ask you. I have been looking at the COA account, and I have yet to get the answer from Mr. Franz on that $280,000 that's not in the COA account, but is marked as being held in escrow as to where it's being held. But I asked for the reports that involved COA, and on the bill list on September 19th, on July 14th, this town transferred $500,000 from that account, and it was called an inter-transfer account, and it was transferred into the borough's operating budget. And then, on November 14th, the council approved a refund back from the interfund, from the operating fund of $500,000 back into the COA fund. As far as I know, that is totally illegal to do that. You are not allowed to take the COA money and use it in your operating account. And I don't know why the $500,000 was put into our operating account to cover or to make look good or whatever it is that it was used for. But it is not something that you have the right to do, and is certainly in violation of the COA process, especially when all you did was give it back. You didn't give it to any of the housing things. You didn't. There was no resolution approving it. It was just an transfer. But this council approved both the taking of it out and the putting of it back in. So I think you should look into why that was done and who did it, because I don't believe that that is a legal thing that was done. But certainly the council has approved it. So in the long run, you become the people responsible for it. In terms of the comments that are made by Councilman Henwood to the public who are sitting back here, I think perhaps if certain council people had sat in the audience of the mayor and council for the many, many years that we have and been frustrated by what's happening, and before they were elected to the council, they actually attended meetings and felt that frustration, they would understand where the public's coming from, and perhaps he would give them a little more tolerance. Thank you.
Is there anybody else?
Would you like to answer, Denise?
Yes, the interfund transfer of $500,000 from the COA account to the current account. The finance officer typically does that from one account to the other when there's a shortage of cash. Again, it was approved by resolution, then replaced with resolution. COA is aware of it. We were scolded for that practice. Finance officer's been made aware not to do that again from that one particular account. That's the explanation for that. The $150,000 in expenses on the capital ordinance, those should be a total of, I believe, the soft costs that were provided to bond counsel in the preparation of the ordinance. those professional fees, engineering, attorneys, things of that nature.
I don't want to interrupt, but since I had asked the borough clerk for copies of all the ordinances and resolutions which she sent me, she did not include any resolutions from this mayor and council transferring those funds. They were just done, a check was just drawn. From what I
You just said we
understand.
approved it by resolution. I
You
believe.
approved the, the voucher, your thing where you
Right,
have
on the bill
40,000.
list, right.
But you said there was, I thought you meant a resolution.
No, not a separate resolution, no.
Okay. Because usually when Mr. Iacone does that and transfers there is a separate resolution that is approved by this council that does that. This
Well,
was just part of the bill list.
Right, exactly. And we were scolded for that.
Anyone else wish to hear it? Dennis?
Dennis Gallagher, 18 on Terrace. Prior to this meeting beginning, I was sitting back here behind Mr. Henwood, and there was a conversation that went on. I couldn't help but overhear what the substance of it was. And the substance was that Mr. Ellis, who was here, was telling Mr. Henwood that a member of the colony, a resident of the colony, was no longer living there. And he was either in a rest home or some sort of care facility. I know that to be not true, so I said that's not the case. And Mr. Henwood then got up, towered over me, and started telling me how, I make an issue out of things. Well, this is kind of serious. If you're saying somebody's in a rest home or in a convalescent facility or something like that, and it doesn't have to be true, that could have ramifications, especially given who's involved here. So I think that you should be cautious about what you say. Other than that, I think we do have we have the ability to limit advertising right away to town and various places. And I'm wondering what kind of enforcement we have, or if we have any at all, because it seems to me that this. The Bell had a big sign for a long time in front. It came down. I thought, wow, that's an improvement. They just took it down to paint it over or something like that. I don't know. Is there ever going to be a limit on the advertising here? I think it diminishes the quality and experience of the town. And also, I'm very concerned that I haven't heard much about what's going on in Fort Lee with the proposed development, but last I heard, nobody from this town ever went up there to monitor what was being proposed. Maybe it's not the case, but I was at every meeting. I only saw one member of the council there, and he was there briefly for 1 night, very briefly. So anyway, I'm concerned that that thing has immense implications for the future of our town. And I don't see any big remedies for what's already taking place, but sure, I don't see any movement here to stop. We have all sorts of ordinances and whatnot that should limit development. I don't think we're living with them. It seems to me that if you're certain people in this town, you walk in there and you want to, listen, on my block, somebody got 14, townhouses, 14, variances. 14 variances for one building. That's absurd. And it's shoehorned in on a very small lot. It just after about a year, finishing up building this thing, and a lot of the delay was they had almost no room on their own property. They had maybe 10% that wasn't covered, and I think it was much less. So they couldn't, they had all sorts of stuff in the street for a long period of time. It inconvenienced everybody for a long period of time, and we're always going to be living with this thing, which there was never enough parking on the street to start with, but it's really gotten severely limited. Yeah, thank you.
Dennis, just in response, the 2 meetings that were up there, I had planning board meetings here. I was aware of the meetings, but I had planning board meeting. I'm not sure what anybody else was doing in those nights,
Yeah.
but I have been in contact with Mark Sokolich, and he's aware of the concern. I mentioned this at a previous meeting, I think, to your wife, and I mean,
I appreciate you doing that, but there's nothing like being
That's
there
true.
and getting the flavor of what's going on,
I
you
understand.
know, and seeing their exhibits and whatnot. It's an immense building, and it's obviously going to have a big impact, not only on our town, but the whole area here is going to be affected. And frankly, everything I heard up there was, it convinced me of anything, is like, they're in a dream world about, you know, it's amazing what you can get away with if you just come in here and you got a suit on and you say you're an expert, or you are an expert, but it's basically, you're being asked to take their word for it, and we have enough to go on now after all this time to know that they're in here to sell something, and they're being paid to sell something, and then they go away, and we're stuck with it, and it's still going on. Enough of it. Thank you. I appreciate you going up there.
No, but as far as the property, I went up with you on Saturday and looked at that house you were talking about on Castor, right, between Castor and,
And
yeah.
yeah. Yes. Well, the thing is, the damage was done. You know, the damage was done when the thing was approved, and you know, I want to get on a tangent, but a lot of the damage is being done in the Board of Adjustment. I mean, the fact is that they have a responsibility to actually enforce what we have on the books, and it seems like they got it upside down. It's the reverse of what it should be. You got to come in here and convince. You should have to convince them that this is worth. There's some redeeming thing about it. There's some really good reason to do it. That's not the way it is now. Not when you can get 14 variances on a thing that is you got. I mean, anybody going up there and disinterested to look at this, you realize this doesn't fit, and it's wrong. It's simply wrong. Thank you.
Mayor, and also just the traffic studies have been sent from the Fort Lee project to both the engineer and the planner, the Edgewater planner.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to respond to 2 comments made.
Good, okay, let me finish, open the public, if anybody
Wait,
else
no, I'd like to
wishes.
respond now if I could, please. I'm allowed to.
Go ahead.
Can I mean, respond to, yes. Just, I want to point out that with regard to the first comments, I couldn't hear what's going on, I was distracted. I just asked for common courtesy, that's all I said. Frustration aside, I just asked for common courtesy. With regard to the second, it was before the meeting started, I'm talking to an old neighbor. You know, I guess I would respond by saying, you know, if you mind your own business, maybe conversations like that don't happen. And I was just asked that, you know, that take that into consideration. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard?
Mayor, if I can also respond to Dennis's comments about the signs. The building department has sent the notice to every billboard, banner, plastic sign, vinyl sign, every sign imaginable that was created through inspection from north to south. They were given a certain time frame. If those signs are not removed, they will be removed by the borough. So that notice was sent to all of those signs throughout town.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Valerie?
Valerie Bardina, 16 Hudson Terrace. And I don't know if I can have a back and forth like everybody else. Mr. Franz, you talked about the hear our chief financial officer being scolded by the state for the 500,000 taken from one account, placed in another, and he was told never to do that again. Taken from the CORE account to the
Yes.
interfund. Why was that taken in the first place, out of the CORE account?
Typically, under the direction of the finance officer, when there are shortages in various accounts, the finance officer will move funds from one account to the other. He happened to use that account to utilize and then replace the money.
Why would there be a shortage in the account?
It's all
About
based
$500,000.
on expenditures and revenues generated.
Would he know exactly what that expense was?
Sure, I'm sure,
If asked?
I'm
He would
sure.
have a record of why he took it from one account and placed it in another, and then took it out of there
It's
and put
all-
it back?
It's all based on expenditures and revenues, that's all. That's the basic explanation for it.
Well, I just want to make sure that it's the expenditures and revenues of the borough.
That is
So that's why
correct.
I'm asking.
Yep.
The $350,000, you said that was capital soft costs, attorneys, engineers, and so forth? I don't know why it would be an engineer, but attorneys, bonding counsel? But I lost you on that one, the soft costs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know what document, I know Mary referenced the document, if you can just repeat what document it was.
It was, you talked about $350,000.
Was it 150 or 350?
It was $350,000,
The
and
temporary emergency appropriation capital.
Oh, that's the down, yeah, that's the down
150.
payment, I'm sorry, I stand corrected. And I thought Mary said 150, I apologize.
It is, that's what it says.
Okay, I heard wrong.
So that was
That would be the
Soft
down
cost, you
payment.
said.
No, that's incorrect, that's the down payment.
down payment for what?
That's down when you create a bond ordinance
It
appropriation.
was 150, it was 150.
It's
she
on
said.
your
Yeah.
resolution.
I don't have it
Sorry.
in front of me, I'm sorry.
But you had said it was capital soft, and it was soft costs, and you referenced borough, you referenced attorneys, and
I may have made a mistake, I apologize.
so would we be able to get a clear answer to those two questions, Mary's two questions? I mean, if you don't have it today, maybe next meeting, a clear answer to it? Where that money went, where it went, where it's going? My other question is the cost, and it's not the remediation portion of the field, and I know this question was asked at the last meeting, the cost of the redoing of the fields, I guess, the redevelopment of the park, you know, you're moving fields, you're kind of restructuring, you're moving. Considering taxes have gone up again, and considering there are concerns with the trees, which I really share her concern, I mean, 100-year-old tree, nobody in this room is gonna be around to see, the little saplings grow into, full mature trees. Perhaps the council, as a cost-saving measure until the economy gets better, might consider just doing the remediation and not doing all the other work, or if you do, limit it to what you have to do where the contamination is.
Well, I believe there's 5 spots that they need to remove soil,
Mhm.
and then I believe the rest of the field, they don't hit the levels where we'd like them to be, and I wouldn't take that chance without children putting them out there. So the major cost is filling in that field for the spaces of 3 to 4 feet.
So it's going to be, and this is my confusion again, because you had initially given one cost for the field, it was lumped together, and then we said, well, wait a minute, what's the breakdown here? And you said, well, this portion is gonna go to the reconfiguring, and this portion is gonna go to the remediation. So I would assume that remediation means not just digging up, but actually capping and redoing, reseeding, after you cap. So why can't you do that? And I'm all for the remediation part of it, absolutely. But there is a lot in that plan that actually does reconfigure and
Well, obviously the fields, we need the fields for the kids, Little League field, and the setup of the.
We're in agreement of that.
Right, the basketball and tennis courts are staying. I mean, I think we're trying to strip this down to the bare bones to get this field open in April of next year. And I think the benefit will be, we'll see what the prices come in at. We'll find out what it's gonna cost.
Well,
We'll go out to bid.
that's my other question. You went out to bid, right? And then the bids, Barbara, you could probably explain, the bids are sealed, right? And then they're opened at a specific time,
The advertisement will be.
the advertisement, and then
Set
public is
date,
free to come to
meeting
see the bids being open?
Yeah, the public is always welcome.
Always, yeah.
Always,
No, I'm not,
yes.
okay. And then, is the public able to get a list of people after everything is done? Of
List of
people who
who
did
submitted?
submit it?
Yes, we could,
That's public?
we do create,
Okay.
of course, yeah. What the
Thank you.
content is not. and
No,
it's
no,
very
no,
few, but
no,
yes,
no.
absolutely.
Thank you. Regarding Mr. Henwood's comments there, this is a very small room. Honestly, you have that big, beautiful room over there. I don't understand why you continue to have your meetings here. I understand it's a work session, but you can actually do the same kind of work there. I was sitting here, over in the corner, and somebody leaned forward to tell me something very important, to whisper it, and as far as I know, this is not a public library where we have to remain absolutely silent. I asked somebody a question, they gave me an answer. It was a very important question
I don't know
in
who it
my
was back
life.
there, I don't know.
I
Council
understand
final.
you don't, but, you're almost on our laps there, and it's not your fault, but that's the way the room is, and that's the way it's designed. So if you don't want to hear anything absolutely, stop having public meetings. You might as well, because there's no interaction here, and Mr. Henwood, you are now a public servant. I was on the council for 6 years, and many times I had to listen to public say things that maybe hurt my feelings or I didn't like. But I had to accept that's what I did when I ran for office and took that oath.
She's past the 5 minutes, I
You
don't
know.
think you scolded in public. She's past the 5 minutes.
No, I'm not fast, because we were talking back and
Whoa.
forth. See, this is the attitude, and it's really a shame, because he's acting like this is a regime, not a democracy. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard? Katie?
You have the same name in the phone. Katie Jones, 359 Undercliff Avenue. Is the town gonna pay the other half of Undercliff, or will the remaining half pay?
It's half paid for now. I believe you're the first on the list for the, what's the name of the plan, Greg?
I really
Development.
just,
Community development.
I just really wish that when
We don't get it
we negotiated, whoever negotiated this, you disrupted the neighborhood for a really long time. It would have been nice if public service just paved the entire block.
That was, I believe that's what we were expecting to happen, and they reneged at the
I
last
know.
minute. Katie.
I'm not the only one.
Right, I know that.
Frida's very mad. Anyway, and also Edgewater Place is still, it's like driving on the moon. And I think I publicly posted that maybe when these people do these jobs, these, little construction jobs, maybe they should post a bond that, the wear and tear on the neighborhood should not be borne by the taxpayer. It should probably be borne by the people who are building these houses. Those 3 houses were built pretty much in the same time period. The one that was never completed, and then Yeoman's old house and Suskind's old house. And that block right there is the worst part of Edgewater Place. And maybe we could set something up where there'd be a bond posted, so the people building would be bearing the responsibility of at least fixing the area. They don't have to repave the entire road, but every day you see people just go, they go like this, they go like this, and you have to squirm down Edgewater Place. And then once again, that particular abandoned building it's a dump. And we see these wonderful public relation pieces for our code officer on the walkway. I don't give a damn about dogs pooping on the walkway. There's so much goose poop, who can even make it, differentiation of what's what. She's got to constantly be on the backs of these people. It's a dump. And now there are raccoons breeding in there, and we have a rabies problem. And, we get notices about a rabies problem, but yet we allow this breeding ground. There's cats in there. There's a whole, there's a whole jungle going on in that spot. And it's dangerous, it's a health hazard, and it's gotten to that point. Something, I know I come in every time and say the same thing, but something needs to be done about that piece of property. Someone new owns it, they put a sign on it. I mean, people who buy these properties should be responsible to take care of them. You know, the rest of us are responsible for our little pieces, so that person needs to clean that spot up. It's disgusting. I don't know, I can't get any plainer than that. It's disgusting. And as to the scolding and the questions of decorum in the room, you know, it's a small town, and a small group of people show up. And I've been to places down in Washington Grove where people show up in one room and the whole town interacts, and guess what? Everybody in the room gets to vote on something, and everybody has a piece of the conversation. And we all know each other, and there's really no reason to be angry over politics, because it's just business, it's not personal. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. It's just business, it's not personal. And my business is my business, and your business is your business. And we might not agree on things, but things like that piece of property is important to me, what's important to you may be different. And we should all have the opportunity to express ourselves and be able to, you know, talk like adults to one another. And decorum should be across the board. We should be polite to one another, and not when it suits us, not when it's important. I mean, you know, last meeting, we were scolded by the ex-mayor, who, the previous meeting, if you go to the videotape, spent the entire time giggling and interrupting people. But yet he thought he should give a lesson in etiquette the following meeting. And then as he leaves the podium, he leans over and uses an expletive in my direction. You know what? I know him since he was a kid. I don't expect anything more from him. But if he were a real man, he would have stayed in the room. Anyway, he ran out the door. But I don't need lessons from people. You know, I don't need to be schooled by people with no class. And I don't need to be schooled here. And I don't think we should be attacking one another. I think you should probably let people talk a little bit longer. You should probably let ideas flow and people express themselves. You know, I don't care if you come in with a preset agenda. You never know what you might learn when you talk to someone who has a different opinion. It's you know, it's the way things have to be now. Things are bad all over. People are concerned. You really have to start. You can't just roll over everybody. This whole ball field thing, you really should consider sticking to the remediation and not the, you know, we can't afford the big project. We can't. They're already talking about, you know, the school's overcrowded. We can't, it's too much. It's too much. At some point, you all have to realize you can't be spending other people's money so freely. We all, you know, it's not, you know, a grant, whatever, it's all out of the same pocketbook. We pay federal taxes, we pay state taxes, we pay local taxes. We have to start coming more like this instead of going like that. And as I said, let's just, you know, try to not use decorum to divide. Let's, you know, polite is polite, not just when it works for one side or the other.
I gotta say, on regular work council meetings, I hold you to the 5 minutes. As far as interaction, I feel for the work sessions, we're doing a pretty decent job of interaction. There's frustration on both sides, and, you know I try to treat everybody a certain way, and I'd ask the same of the audience and our council, so we can improve on it. Anyone else wish to be heard? Close the open to the public.
Mayor, I just want to clarify, and I apologize for the confusion. Resolution 212-147 is a